So in lower plants and animals, it is mainly driven by survival and procreation. So even a dog or any living being, you show some food, it will come. You show a stick, it will go away. So that is the level at which the lowest level of living beings they operate. And as we go to higher animals, it goes to pleasure and emotions. So as higher animals, they live in herds, in groups, and so like protecting the herd, taking care of the young ones, parenting, grandparenting, like, and the relationship between different animals within the herd, that leads to competition, jealousy, anger, all kinds of emotions. They all start manifesting, and they all come into picture. So pleasure seeking in various ways becomes the, and also emotional bonding, seeking happiness in emotions and pleasure, becomes the prime means in the higher animals. Now, as you go still higher, when you go to human beings, we have values, we have compassion, discipline, right? Satya, ahimsa, brahmacharya, self-discipline, and cooperation instead of competition, and taking care of the weak ones instead of the strong overpowering the weak. So all kinds of human values come into picture, and seeking knowledge, seeking science, arts. So all these things come as human values, and a human being finds more pleasure in being honest, being self-disciplined, than being indulgent, right? Like so by following like things like Ekadasi Upavasa or Shivratri Jagran, we find pleasure in doing all that which no animal is capable of, right? So self-discipline itself is a source of lot of happiness to human beings. Now, going still further is the spiritual goal. So the whole evolution, as we see, becomes the source of happiness, becomes subtler and subtler, and it reaches the highest in the spiritual goal, even beyond the realm of human values. Now, if we ask what is the kind of happiness we are looking for, now we are looking for permanent, unconditional happiness. Yeah, we want happiness irrespective of day of the week or time of the day, and irrespective of under success or failure, or like heat or cold, right? Sitoshna sukha dukkeshu labha labhau jaya jayau, right? Under all conditions, we want to be unconditionally happy. Now that is the spiritual goal, and if that is possible, then we should be happy here and now. So because if the unconditional happiness is possible, and if that is, then it should be there here and now. The only reason why we cannot avail happiness now is because of ignorance, because there is nothing to get, because happiness is there, it's unconditional, it is permanent, it is everywhere. So it is here and now. Now the only reason why we are not able to avail it can be only because we don't know it is there, or we don't know how to tap it. And the scriptures say the true knowledge of the self is the one which can give you the real happiness. So basically, you are unconditionally, intrinsically happy, and you don't know about this particular nature of yourself, and that prevents you from being happy. So knowledge is the way. So this is the whole Vedanta, and we have been discussing it in very great detail in the past 4 weeks, and this is kind of a summary. And we saw that this seeking happiness in survival and procreation is what the scriptures call as artha. Seeking happiness in pleasure and emotions is called as kama. Seeking happiness in values and self-discipline is called dharma. And the spiritual happiness, seeking the spiritual happiness, which is unconditional, which comes through knowledge, is called moksha. So this is the way the 4 purusharthas are designed. And if we look at the Gospel of Sri Ram Krishna, he repeatedly talks about Kama Kanchana Tyaga, which is basically get out of the dependence on Artha and Kama for your happiness. And Swamiji talks about Atmano Mokshartam Jagat Hitayacha. That is the motto he has given for the Ramakrishna Math. And this talks about seeking dharma and moksha for happiness. This way, like the 4 Purusharthas are covered. So this in a summary is the whole progression of spiritual life. Like give up the Kama Kanchana way to happiness and seek the dharma moksha way for happiness, and ultimately you will reach the spiritual goal, which is the Atma Jnana, which will give you moksha or dependence on. Moksha is basically free from dependence on people, objects, and situations for happiness. That's called moksha. Now, once that is the goal. Now, this having been said, so now attaining the true knowledge of the self is the goal. Now, the question is, what is hiding the truth from us? What is hiding the true knowledge from us? This also we have been discussing. So, the fundamental thing is evolutionary baggage. The evolutionary baggage which we have been carrying right from the inanimate to the unicellular to the multicellular, like all the way through, that is what is preventing the truth, right? And this is completely in line with the modern the research. So there have been a lot of research which have been happening using game theory and neuropsychology and all this, like where they have very well established that this entire biological and psychological system is designed for survival and not for freedom, not for truth. Okay, so we need to fight against this. We need to swim against this tide. So just like there are, like the body has got a lot of vestigial unnecessary organs like the appendix or the ear muscles, right, which are there but which are of no use at this stage of our evolution of the physical system. Similarly, there are several the psychological things also which are the remnants of the evolution, like anger, jealousy, like these don't have any role in the current situation, at the current evolution and the current spiritual evolution, right? They were useful. Anger was useful, jealousy was useful, competition was useful, and all these things were useful when we were animals, right? But they are not useful now, and that is what is this flight or flight, like the fight or flight or freeze, right? This is what is creating a lot of stress and diabetes and many of these lifestyle diseases which we have today can be traced back to the evolutionary remnants of these anger, jealousy, and the adrenaline, cortisol, the operation of the sympathetic nervous system, which was there for protecting the species when we were animals. But now the same evolutionary baggage which we are carrying at the limbic system, at the physical system, is creating all kinds of problems for us. And the one more problem that it creates for us is that it is preventing us from spiritual evolution, and we need to work towards it. The whole sadhana is basically growing beyond this evolutionary baggage, dropping this evolutionary baggage which we have, and growing beyond our animal nature into human nature, and growing even beyond the human nature into a spiritual nature. Now, there are 3 specific problems that the scriptures also have identified, and it is exactly there in the modern evolutionary biology also. We can find the same thing. So first thing is the survival instinct. So we have a very strong survival instinct, which the scriptures call as Brahma Granthi. It's a knot, right? It's the knot of Brahma, right? The Brahma Granthi, which is the survival instinct, which we will have to cut it or loosen it first, and then ultimately cut it, right? And the second one is the pleasure seeking, which is called Vishnu Granthi, right? And the third is the individuality, the concept of individuality that we have, which is Rudra Granthi. Now, these 3 have to be broken in this order so that we can become free, right? And There is nothing wrong with them in the sense that they were useful so far, but no longer. Like, just like Sri Ramakrishna says, right? A wound, when the wound is not fully healed, you have the blackish brown crust which covers it, and that is needed as a protective mechanism till the wound is healed. But once the wound is healed, it has to drop off by itself. He also gives another example where you make a clay mold, and then you make a clay mold of whatever you want to make, and you pour molten metal into it, and once it sets and once the metal is cooled off, now you have to break open the clay mold so that the sculpture is revealed outside, right? So this is the whole process, and the same thing happens here. So whatever these survival instincts, pleasure seeking instinct, the individuality, these are all needed at the lower levels of evolution, and to go further into spiritual evolution, they have to be broken out, right? They have served their purpose, so now we have to outgrow them, we need to overcome them, right? And these three is what is called as Mahamaya: the survival instinct, the pleasure seeking instinct, and this concept of individuality, which is basically an evolutionary baggage. This is called Mahamaya, and this is what, when we say we have to overcome Maya and go further, this is what it means. And the aspect of Mahamaya which ties us down into this Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi and Rudra Granthi is called Avidya Maya, and the aspect of Maya which opens at these knots, breaks these knots, and helps us to overcome these is called Vidya Maya. So the whole process, we don't, when we say fight, we are fighting against the lower instincts with the help of the Lord. So Mahamaya is our friend. She helps us. She is our mother. She has been nurturing us, and now the delivery has to happen, right? And she has to push us out. She has to give delivery to the knowledge, and we will become free, right? So the Vidya Maya, taking the help of Vidya Maya, we need to overcome this. So this is the whole, we saw all these. I'm just giving a recap of what we have seen so far. And now we saw that Gita gives the way in a beautiful combination of karma, bhakti, jnana combined together. It gives a path where you start with the world dependence for security and world dependence for pleasure, which is the bound state. And by offering all your actions to the Lord, you shift your dependence from the world dependence to God dependence. And by meditating upon the Lord, you shift from world dependence for pleasure to God dependence for pleasure. And from this state, this is the state called Yoga Rudha in the Gita. And from that state, you go to the next state where the Lord will save you. And he says, Teshamaham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat, right? So if you do the spiritual process, and then the third step, the Lord said he will do it for you, right? So this is the Gita's way to the goal, which we saw very elaborately the week before last. And so the Gita's way, basically it identifies 3 stages in the sadhana, and each of these 3 stages has its own worldview, attitude towards work, and attitude towards worship. So the first stage, the Artha and Artharthi stage, where you see the world, the Lord, and yourself as separate entities, and you work in the world and you offer the fruits of action to the Lord in gratitude, and you also worship the Lord to free yourself from problems and to get desirable things. From that stage, you graduate to a Jignasu stage, where the Jagat, you see the Jagat as a manifestation of Ishvara. The world is nothing but God, and still you retain the separate identity between yourself and the Lord. And then, knowing as the world as a manifestation of the Lord, you offer the work itself to the Lord, right? And worshipping the Lord, you worship the Lord not to get free from afflictions or getting desirable things. You worship the Lord for knowledge and to give knowledge and strength to face all the ups and downs of life. Now, this is the Jignasu state. And from there you go to the Jnani state where there is only Ishvara and nothing else exists, right? And knowing that the Lord is everything, like you offer the sense of doership to the Lord in complete surrender, and then you worship the Lord without any expectation. Now, this is the Jnani state. So, as we saw in the previous slide, you work towards first becoming an artharthi, right, where you consider everything as Ishvara Prasada, and then from that you graduate to Jignasu, where you consider all work as Ishvara Arpana, as offering to the Lord. If you do these two stages, then the Lord says, making you a Jnani, he will take care, right? So you need to work towards becoming a Jignasu, right? So from whatever level you are now, you have to become first an Artha and Artharthi, which is basically a religious life. And from that you graduate to a spiritual life where you become a Jignasu along with the religious life, like with involving the Lord. And if you do this much, then the Lord says the final stage he will take care of, right? That's what we saw, right? And we also saw the Panchakosha Viveka, right? So where we saw that you have Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Buddhimaya Kosha, and the Anandamaya Kosha. These are 5 koshas, and you as pure consciousness is beyond these 5 koshas. But then to go to the top, to reach the spiritual goal, right, we follow a 2-step process, right, where the first step, you give up the identification with the body and mind, and by identifying yourself as the Jivatman. So basically, out of the 5 koshas, the 4 lower koshas you give up. You say that is not me, but you hold on to the Karana Sharira, or you hold on to your identity as the Jivatma, as the wielder of free will. And using this, right, you go ahead and you work towards punya, developing punya to develop susamskara, good samskara, and the right worldview. You work towards this, right? And how do you work towards this? By doing your duty, helping others, follow self-discipline, japa, puja, meditation, right? Satsanga, and swadhyaya, introspection, right? By doing all these things, you basically, by identifying yourself with as the Jivatman, with the Karana Sharira, then you give up your identity with the body and mind. So Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, and Vijnanamaya Kosha identity, you give up by holding on to your identity with the Karana Sharira or the Anandamaya Kosha. Then you can do all these things. This whole sadhana you do by doing that, and of course also involving the Lord, right? And if you, when you do this, then the last step is the, after finishing this, then the second step you can go, where you give up the identity with the individuality also. You also give up the identity of the Pranamaya, of the Karana Sharira or Anandamaya Kosha, and that the process is Shravana Manana Nididhyasana and complete surrender, right? And Paramathanji, like, he gives an example of a plane, right? How it goes on the runway and then it takes off. The plane is designed to fly. It has to fly. But then to lift off, it has to develop a certain critical velocity. Then it can lift off. And the plane running on the runway is the first step, which is the Karma Yoga and Dhyana Yoga part. And the plane flying in the air is the Jnana Yoga part, where you give up, identify yourself with as the pure consciousness, and that will take you to the goal. So just as how initially a plane has to run on the runway and then lift off, you need to first follow the Karma Yoga and Jnana and Dhyana Yoga as the first step. Then you can go for Jnana Yoga as the second step. So now we saw in the week before last, we saw Karma Yoga. So there I kind of rushed through very fast. Here, like, we'll go slightly slowly and we will try to understand, right? Now, when you say Karma Yoga, the basic thing, as I told you, the whole goal of Karma Yoga is to give up your security seeking. The security instinct has to be given up, and Karma Yoga is the way to that. So how do? You understand that there is an order in this world, and you will get what you deserve, right? And everything in life happens by the will of the Lord for your spiritual development, right? And no one else is responsible for what happens in your life, and you put your trust in God, and you give up all your regrets, grudges, and anxiety. Now, this is called Karma Yoga. So, Karma Yoga is basically giving up your security instinct. We have a very strong security instinct by which we hold on to our life, we hold on to our body, we hold on to our loved ones, right? And the security of people who are dependent on us or people whom we love. Now, we have a very strong security instinct, and we have to give up this security instinct. We have to give up this holding on, and because this makes us hold on to our Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha. To be able to give up this Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha, to give up the identity with these, we have to give up this security instinct. Only by giving up the security instinct, we can give up our identity, and that is done by having faith in the law of karma and having faith in the Lord. This is the truth. The truth is that the Lord takes care of us fully. The Lord ensures that everything happens in our life for our spiritual development. Now, we need to trust the Lord. And when we trust the Lord that everything happens for our good, then we will not have any regrets about the past, any grudges about others, and no anxiety about the future. Now, this, how to develop this, right? By this is developed. Now, what ties us to the security? That is where we have to, where Mahamaya comes in, right? Now, Mahamaya ties us to this world because that is the way she will extract work out of us. We have a lot of debt. We are already highly indebted, and nature will extract what is due from us. And that is the reason why this security instinct is put into us, because that is the one, the sticks and carrots are by which work will get extracted out of us. So now, how do we get over it? By voluntarily working, right? So that is where yajna and dana comes. Yajna and dana are the way by which we convince Mahamaya, we convince the Lord that we don't need to work as a slave, we can work as masters, right? We don't need to work as slaves, we can work as friends to the Lord, we can work as the master of this world, and Mahamaya need not worry about extracting work from us. We can work without sticks and carrots. Now, how do we prove to Mahamaya that we are responsible citizens and we don't need punishments, we don't need rewards or recognitions to make us work? And we can do that by only working, right? So we are already indebted a lot, we owe a lot, and we have to give back. So our scriptures have identified 5 categories, 5 heads under which we owe to nature. The first one is Deva Runa, which can be paid back by what is called as Deva Yajna. So we owe to nature, right? Nature, rivers, sunlight, air, the Panchabhutas, we owe to all these, right? And we have to take care of nature by being ecologically conscious. We fulfill our Deva Runa by doing Deva Yajna. And Bhuta Yajna, we owe to other living beings. We cannot live without trees, right? As Sadhguru says, half of our lungs is hanging outside in the form of trees. Like there is a kind of a mutual relationship between we breathing and they, generating oxygen by photosynthesis. And also for food, right? Like we depend on other living beings for our food, right? So we depend on so many things for other living beings, and by taking care of other living beings, by being kind to them, and also by preserving the forests and other living beings, that is how we pay back. So that is called bhuta runa, which we pay back by bhuta yajna. And we are dependent on other human beings, right? Like we don't grow our own food, we don't stitch our own cloth, right? We don't build our own houses. We depend on other human beings for all these things, right? We cannot live independent of other human beings. We cannot live independent of the society. So we are highly indebted to other human beings. So that is called manushya runa, and that is given back by manushya yajna. So manushya yajna, one is, of course, we pay for the services, we pay tax to the government, and we give what is due when we take services from different people. And also we do social service, we take care of underprivileged people, we donate for ashrams which take care of underprivileged people. And during times of calamities, we donate money, we take care of the afflicted people. All these things go into manushya yajna, right? And then comes the pitru yajna. We are indebted to our ancestors biologically, right? As we saw, right, like right from the amoeba, we are indebted to everything. And here we kind of focus on our human ancestors. Like we have this human body which has been given to us by our pitrus, by our human ancestors, and we have a runa towards them for having given this human birth. And how do we take care of that? By taking care of the old people in our own houses, our parents, our grandparents, and taking care of the next generation by taking care of the children, grandchildren, and not only our own family, our cousins and the second cousins, distant cousins, all these people. And also taking care of like orphans, like donating to orphanages, and then donating to old age homes who don't have the privilege or a family to take care of themselves. By doing all these things, we take care of the pitru runa, and the pitru yajna is fulfilled by taking care of old people and young people. This is taken care of. Now the fifth runa is the cultural heritage which we have. We not only have a biological heritage, we also have a cultural heritage. As we saw, like like in the evolution, like for human beings, the culture is more important. Science, arts, crafts, religion, philosophy, like all these things gives us our cultural heritage, right? And we learn, like we are different from animals because of this cultural heritage. And this has put a big runa on us, which is called as a rishi runa. And the way to pay back is called rishi yajna. One is, of course, we have to pay for the services, we have to support schools, and even by like watching a good movie, we are actually in a legal way, like not a pirated copy, but paying for a good movie and watching it, that itself is giving back a rishi runa. Or buying a good book, right? Donating to libraries, and donating to schools, colleges, educating poor children, right? Paying for the education of poor children, that is giving back to rishi runa, right? And of course, like putting whatever we have learned into practice and also teaching it to others, all these things are called rishi yajna, right? Paying, like suppose let us say like you learn music, by paying the teacher and thereby giving a means of livelihood for a person who wants to dedicate his life for music, that itself is a rishi yajna. And so that way, even if you study music by paying a teacher, you are actually doing rishi yajna. And of course, by supporting such cultural activities, and also like by teaching to others, all these things is rishi yajna. So now this pancha maha yajna, this is called. So the pancha maha yajna is the way we give back to society what we already owe to the society. Then we have to go beyond that, and we have to contribute more than we consume, right? So we saw in the first lecture, right? Kitna deta hai? What is your efficiency, right? Do you contribute more than you consume? Are you an efficient machine? Do you give more than you take, right? That is called dana. And Gita gives a very beautiful shloka. Datavyam iti yat danam diyate anupakarine deshe kale cha patre cha tat danam satvikam smritam. Right? So give to people who cannot give you back just because as a duty. Right? Anupakarine for people, because to upakarine if you give, that is yajna, right, which is covered in the Panchamaha yajnas. Dana is giving beyond that, right? Giving anupakarine is dana, right? So, so these come under the karma yoga, and also tapas, right? Tapas basically is you establishing your human nature by going beyond your so basically the human values, right? Going beyond the animal values, that is tapas. And Gita talks about tapas very detailedly in the 17th chapter, right? So here are a few shlokas, right? It says, what are tapas? Data, so Deva Dvija Guru Prajna Pujanam, right? So Deva, that is nature, right? Deva Dvija, that is cultured people, right? And Guru, that is this one, right? The teachers, Prajna, wise people. Now, Pujanam, right? So worshipping them. So we saw all this Panchamaha Yajna, right? Like many of them is covered here. And Shaucham, right? Shaucham is here. This is about the Sharira Tapa, so which is physical. So basically, like Shaucha is physical cleanliness, everything, keeping everything neat and tidy. And then Arjavam, right? Straightforwardness, truth, having your action and words together, like, right? Your words, your action, and your thought. These three should be in a straight line, right? So that is you're aligning your action to your words and your thoughts. That is tapas. And brahmacharya, right? Celibacy, chastity, and like also self-discipline, right? And at a physical level, right? These are all tapas. Ahimsa, not hurting other living beings, right? Not elbowing down others, not taking advantage of the weakness of others. They are all, that is called ahimsa. So these are all come under the Sharira tapas. Then verbal tapas, right? So at the Vang level, right? At the verbal level, Anudvega Karam Vakyam, like whatever you talk, talk softly, don't shout, right? That itself is a tapas. What a beautiful tapas, just saying, you take a vow and saying, in the next 1 month, I will not raise my volume beyond this level, right? I will not shout. That is called Anudvega Karam Vakyam, right? That is a Vak tapas. Then Satya, Priya, Hitam, right? So whatever you speak should pass through these three filters. It should be truthful, Satyam. It should be pleasant, Priyam, and it should be beneficial, Hitam. Satyam, Priyam, Hitam, right? So anything that you talk, any word that comes out of your mouth, it should follow these three Satya, Priya, Hita. Otherwise, don't talk, right? Now, this is a verbal austerity. And then Swadhyaya, right? Studying good books, reading good books, right? And then Abhyasana, chanting, right? Chanting, doing japa, right? These are all verbal tapas. Then comes the mental level, right? Manasika tapas. Manaf prasada saumyatvam, right? So basically, having a cheerful, positive attitude of mind is itself a tapas, right? A beautiful thing. Suppose you can take a tapas. You can say, for the next 1 month, whatever happens in my life, I will smile. I will have a smile on my face. That is a tapas which Gita is what do you call recommending, right? Maunam is like mentally I will not unnecessarily think of things which are unnecessary, right? Maunam. Atma vinigraha, right? So control of the thoughts. So here when we say Atma vinigraha, the control of the mind, it's always about the second thought, because the first thought which comes into your mind, you don't have control, right? Only whether to pursue that thought or not, you have control. So always mind control or thought control is always about the second thought, whether you want to pursue it or not, because the first thought comes from the subconscious, and the second thought, whether to pursue or not, that is under your voluntary control, right? So always remember that. So then bhava shamshuddhi, right? The purity of intention, right? Whatever you do, you should have good intention towards everyone, right? That is called bhava samshuddhi. And he says all these things are the manasika tapas, right? So like this, Gita gives a list of tapasyas which you can follow. Now, if you see in this, the tapasyas are very sattvic. Like you don't torture the body, yeah, or you don't starve yourself, like in the name of tapas, because austerity or tapasya is always for the mind, not for the body, right? You should not torture your body. In fact, like there is another place where he says torturing the body in the name of tapasya or worship, he says it's a tamasic aspect, right? So he talks about tamasic worship, rajasic worship, and sattvic worship, and all those things. So even tapas also, tamasic tapas, rajasic tapas, and sattvic tapas, Gita talks about. Now, so always remember that by tapas or austerity, you are training the mind and not the body. So you are based on that, you should design your tapas, beautiful tapas, which Gita gives here, a beautiful list, right? And also, whatever you do it for the Lord, right? So Gita always says, bring the Lord into the picture, right? Involve the Lord, right? We saw in the last week also, right? Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram, right? So always, like, now one is the swadharma, right? Now whatever you do, that itself, you doing your duty itself is an offering to the Lord. Yataf pravritir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam. It is the Lord who is filling this entire universe. So swakarmana tam.
Yeah.
Can you go on mute, please? So swakarmana tam abhyarchya, right? So by doing your duty, you worship the Lord, right? Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. You will attain the perfection, right? And also the Lord says, whatever you do, yajna, dana, tapas, everything you do it as an offering to the Lord. Yat karoshi yadashnasi. Whatever you do or whatever you consume, whatever you contribute, yat karoshi, or whatever you consume, yat ashnasi. Then yet juhosi, whatever you do as yajna, dadasi yat, whatever you do as dana, and yet tapasyasi, whatever you do as tapas, right? Yajna, dana, tapas, whatever we saw now, right? Do everything as offering to the Lord. Tat kurushva mad arpanam, right? Do that as an offering to the Lord. So this is the way of Gita. Now, coming to practice, today I want to give you two practices for this whole thing, right? Now you have understood the theory, what is karma yoga, why should we do karma yoga, right? And how should we do karma yoga, right? So now yajna, dana, tapas, this is the way to do karma yoga. What is to be done, everything is very, very clearly given. So now you take this, what I'm going to tell now, as your this is the core of karma yoga, which I learned from my teacher, right? Now draw a circle around you and ensure that there is always a net outflow, right? Draw a circle around you. You cannot avoid taking something from outside. You have to eat food, you have to wear clothes, you have to use transport, you have to live in a house, you have to consume, right? You cannot help it, but ensure that your outflow is always much, much higher than your inflow, right? Draw a circle around you and ensure that there is always a net outflow, right? Serve your family, serve your profession, serve your society in whatever way appropriate, right? Whatever is your duty, whatever is you have to do given your position in life, given your different roles in life, everywhere give more than you take in all dealings, right? Whether it is to your family, whether it is to your institution in terms of research, whether it is to your profession in terms of job, whether it is to the society, everywhere you just ensure that you give more than what you take. We saw, right? Like what is kitna deta hai, what is your mileage, what is your efficiency, right? Now fix a percentage of your income, like 2% to 15% is a ballpark figure, and give that in charity. Okay, whatever is your income, doesn't matter, you just ensure that either 2% to 15%, whichever you are comfortable with. Fix one amount and give that in charity. And as your income keeps increasing, keep maintaining that percentage. Your charity should increase as your income goes up. Okay. So you can also increase the percentage also as you go up, right? So whatever it is, fix some amount and never fail in giving in charity. Even if a person, and you can give this advice to others also, even if a person says, I am very poor, even if a person says, doesn't matter. Even if he is earning 1,000 rupees per month, let him give at least 100 rupees in charity. Understood? Percentage, fix the percentage. Doesn't matter how much ever low or high the person earns. If the person earns 1 lakh a month, let him give 10,000 in charity. If he earns 1,000 rupees a month, let him give 100 rupees in charity. 10% let him give, right? Doesn't matter how much, because if it is very low, a person will complain, oh, even I'm getting very low income, how can I give? If a person is getting a lot in income, he will say, how can I give so much? How can I give 10,000 rupees in charity? So that is the problem, right? The mind will find all kinds of reasons not to give. You have to break it. Charity is mandatory. Fix a percentage and give, right? Don't compromise there. That is the way to break the cycle of samsara, right? Mahamaya will puts this security consciousness in your brain, which prevents you from giving. You have to break it by forcing yourself to give. So this is needed, right? And Mahamaya will again delude you to say something is there for free, grab it. Nothing comes for free. That is the bondage. Anytime some carrot is shown to you saying, okay, this is for free, know that in some other way you have to give, right? Actually, you have to give more than what you take, right? That is the way to get out of bondage. The worldly people will say, okay, I want to take advantage, I want to be worldly wise, I want to grab as much as possible. That is the way of the bound worldly people who will continue to be in samsara. But now we are all spiritual aspirants. We are going for a spiritual life. In spiritual life, the more you give, the better. The more you give, more karma is worked out. The more karma gets away from you. The more you give, your bonds become looser and looser, right? What binds you to this world will become loose only if you give. The more you give, the faster will be your spiritual progress, right? Know this for sure. The more you give, the faster will be your spiritual progress. Okay. So, and do everything as an offering to the Lord. Okay. There are only two entities in this whole universe, you and God. There is no third entity, right? There are only two entities in this universe, you and God. God comes to you in the form of family members, your research supervisor, your students. God comes to you in the form of your servant. God comes to you in the form of your vegetable vendor, sweeper, right? Your neighbor, your friend, relative, parents. Like, it is the Lord who is wearing all these various masks and interacting with you. There is no third entity in this universe. There are only two entities, you and God. Everything that you do is an offering to the Lord, and everything that happens to you is by the will of the Lord. So remember this, there is no third entity in this universe. You and God, there are only two things, right? You remember these two, and leading your life based on these two principles is called karma yoga. This is the whole of karma yoga is this much. Always ensure you give more than you take, and there are only two entities in this universe, you and the Lord. Okay. Now imbibe this and tune your life according to this practice. Second practice is about meditation, right? This is also mandatory. Dhyana is mandatory, right? Choose your Ishta Devata. If you have a guru who has pointed you to an Ishta Devata, fine. Or if you don't have a guru and you have a family tradition, you have a family deity, fine. If that is also not there, then if you have a deity whom you like, Ganesha, Shiva, Vishnu, fix one Ishta Devata. Okay. Then choose one mantra. If a guru has given you a mantra, best. Otherwise, if you have been initiated into Gayatri mantra, fine. Otherwise, like if your family deity is there and you can pick up the name of that god, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Narayanaya. There are so many mantras to different, so many namas to different deities. Pick whatever mantra which is appropriate to your Ishta Devata. If you can get a mantra diksha, if you can take mantra diksha from a guru, that is best. But till you get a mantra diksha from a guru, pick whatever Ishta Devata you like, whatever mantra which is appropriate, and start your practice. Okay. I will teach you a procedure for daily meditation. Do that daily meditation. Okay. Don't wait for, like, oh, I have to wait for a guru, I have to seek a guru, I am not able to find the right guru. That all okay, fine. But start now, right? Start your meditation now. Moment you wake up, start chanting the mantra. Okay. So moment you wake up, sit for 30 minutes to 60 minutes, chant loudly or mentally. If you have good concentration, chant mentally. If you don't have good concentration, chant loudly. Okay. Chant loudly the Ishta Devata mantra, or some slokas about Ishta Devata, or some slokas from the Gita, something. And it is good to, there are a lot of stotras available which will kind of, go through the life of a saint, or, like Ramayana, Mahabharata, those kind of things, some incidents in the life of devotees of the Lord. So which are easy to remember, right? Which gives good concentration. So those you can use them, right? And chant knowing the meaning. Okay, preferably. So moment you wake up, spend 30 to 60 minutes doing this. Before checking any social media, before talking to other family members, before, doing any other household work or anything, before doing anything else, moment you wake up, do this. Okay. And then anytime before when you are taking bath, you offer the water to the Lord before taking bath, because the water is going to touch all parts of your body. It is going to have a profound influence on your thoughts also. So there are mantras in the scriptures. Gange cha Yamune chaiva Narmada Godavari Sindhu Kaveri Jalaismin Sanidhim Kuru. Like there is a mantra also. You can use that mantra, or otherwise, no problem. You offer the water to the Lord before taking bath. If you are taking bath even in a like a river or a place also, like offer first before taking bath. After bath, before eating anything, do your daily meditation, which procedure I will tell you. You can follow that, or you can follow anything which you have learned from your guru or anyone else. Okay. And before anything enters your mouth, offer it to the Lord. Never eat or drink anything, because what you eat and what you drink is going to make your physical body, and the physical body is going to affect your mind. It is going to affect your thoughts. So anything that enters into your mouth, it has to be a prasada only. You can, as a spiritual aspirant, you cannot afford to eat anything other than prasada. Anything you eat, offer it to the Lord before you eat. Okay. So that way you don't eat anything other than prasada. Okay. And chant the name of the Lord or your mantra while doing any work that does not need your full attention, like brushing your teeth, taking bath, cooking, walking, right? Any activity that doesn't use the full mental capacity, fill it up with the name of the Lord or your mantra. Never leave the mind idle. An idle mind will start thinking about all kinds of things, right? If you have seen how they take an elephant through a market street, they will give something to the elephant's trunk, like some chain or a stick, something, or even a small piece of grass or something they will give it to the elephant. The elephant with this trunk, it will keep on playing with that, keep on rotating with that. And if you don't give anything to the elephant's trunk, it will start grabbing things which are around, right? That is exactly the nature of the mind. If you don't engage your mind with something voluntarily, the mind will start thinking about all unwanted things. So never leave the mind idle, right? Always fill the mind with something. So if you are doing a work which doesn't take your full mind, then you chant your name of the mantra or chant the name of the Lord or think about something voluntarily, right? And of course, when you're thinking about doing some work which requires your full attention, of course, then you give full attention to the work. The bottom line is never leave the mind idle, right? And similarly, before going to sleep, also chant the name of the Lord, do meditation for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, right? Before going to sleep. This way, from all your waking time, you engage your mind. Ultimately, what you should understand is spiritual life is not a hobby. That is your main life. To your spiritual life, you have your family life, you have your professional life, you have your social life, you have all other kinds of student life, everything else. But the primary thread in your life has to be spiritual life. Everything else are kind of incidental, added to it, depending on the position in your life, depending on your responsibilities, depending on so many other things, right? So slowly you shift your entire life gear to a spiritual life, then you'll start seeing results. Spiritual life is not difficult at all, right? You just have to, I've given you two practices, right? Practice 1, karma yoga. Practice 2 is about meditation and the lifestyle change, right? So these 2 pages, whatever is there, if you follow, right, surely you'll be able to progress very fast. Okay. Some more details. I think we are almost out of time. So I think, yeah, lack of time, and these slides I rushed through even week before last. I thought I'll be able to spend some time this week, but again, anyway, I'll have to rush through. So I think we already discussed these, and they are pretty obvious. So what is meditation? It is a pure mental activity, and sajatiya pratyaya pravaha, flow of similar thoughts, is called meditation. Different types of meditation, and we discussed last week what are the obstacles that we discussed in detail, so I won't cover it now. And meditation is not possible unless you have a meditation conducive lifestyle. That is what I have already discussed with you. The 2 practices I told you, that is basically tells you what is called a meditation conducive lifestyle, right? And when you sit and meditate, like there are these we discussed already before. So let me skip this. And yeah, so the process, this is the meditation process which you can follow, right? So whenever you sit for meditation, if you have already been initiated by a guru, if you have already learned a meditation process with the guru, follow that. In case you have not, then you can follow this one. So you always start with some puja, physical puja or verbal chanting, so that will bring your mind to the current situation, right? So chanting is a very, very beautiful way to bring your mind and make your mind to concentrate, right? And then always wish well to everyone, right? Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve, right? Like so, bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Chant it with fully being aware of the meaning of every word, and you should mean every word as you chant. That is wishing well to everyone. and then say thanks to all the people and teachers. We saw the list, right? Like the Panchamaha Yajna, we discussed whom all we are indebted to, right? So show gratitude, think of all of them in gratitude, and then you can do mental chanting, or you can think about the life of the deity or some incidents, that's called Leela Dhyana. Then you can do Manasa Puja, right, where just like a physical puja, you can learn and you can think about the Lord in the center of your heart. And one thing here I want to tell you, there are various procedures, but the heart is the right place to meditate upon if you don't have the close guidance of a guru. There are different places to meditate, different types of meditation, all those things are there, but all of them are only for to be followed under a close guidance of a guru. If you don't have a close guidance of a guru, if you are doing meditation by yourself, always meditate only in the heart. Don't meditate in the navel, in the Mooladhara, in the eyebrow center. Like all those things are for only to be done under close guidance from a guru. Okay, if you are doing yourself, always meditate only in the heart. This is a very, very serious thing, right? Remember this, right? So meditate in the heart, just like as you can see in the picture, no, like they are kind of depicted Swamiji meditating upon Sri Ram Krishna, right? Like that on the full form, or even it can be pratika also. You can even meditate upon the light of a lamp, right? In the center of a lotus, you can imagine a light of a lamp, a golden yellow lamp. You can meditate upon the golden yellow light in the center of a lotus, in the center of your heart, right? So that's a very good pratika dhyana. It is mentioned even in the Upanishads also, right? So you can meditate, and along with that you can do japa. Along with the imagination, you do japa also. And then at the end of your practice, you again offer gratitude to people, and then don't expect your mind to be able to concentrate right from the beginning. You will have some beginner's luck. Initially your mind will concentrate, but after some time it will start wandering. No problem, gently bring it back. You don't need to regret for not being able to concentrate. Don't worry, right? Just follow the meditation, keep doing it. Things will happen over a period of time. Okay. And yeah, so what will you get by meditation? This also I rushed through last time. So you will develop deep love for God and human and other living beings, right? And don't think you will don't worry, like a lot of people, they kind of do all this japa, puja, meditation, everything to develop concentration, to be able to remember things, to develop some superpowers and all kinds of things. Like, don't worry, none of those things will happen. Don't expect all those things to happen. Okay. And those are not the reasons why you should meditate upon. Here are the right reasons why you should meditate upon. You will be able to face the ups and downs of life with greater resilience. That is the goal of meditation here, right? Facing the ups and downs of life with great resilience, and to be free from greed, anger, jealousy, sorrow, fear. You'll be free from all these things. This is the goal for meditation. With this as the goal, you meditate. This is called spiritual progress, right? This is called spiritual progress, and you meditate with this. And another meditation which you can do is the Panchakosha Viveka. Like in the first class we discussed, right? One meditation is to identify all the 5 koshas, and as and when you identify each kosha, you say, this is not me, because I'm able to identify it. So that way you disidentify with each of the koshas one by one as you meditate upon them. And then finally you say, like, I am pure consciousness beyond all these 5 koshas, right? So that this is another meditation which you can do, and this is actually this is called Neti Neti meditation, right? And that is actually a part of the Jnana Yoga. I think Jnana Yoga I will kind of skip for this session, right? So maybe we can you can there is a full article on Jnana Yoga on my website, practicalphilosophy.in, that is called All is One, right? It's called All is One. There's an article, you can read that. And meditation also, there is one beautiful article called Meditation According to Bhagavad Gita. You can read that. It is published in September, Vedanta Kesari. You can get that and read, right? That article that covers all aspects of meditation is covered in that, according to Gita. Meditation According to Bhagavad Gita in Vedanta Kesari, September 2021, right? You can read that. You can also read the article on the website, practicalphilosophy.in. Okay. So, yeah, so I think like we'll wind up so that we can have some question answers if they are there. And in case there are not many question answers, maybe we can have a short meditation session. So this is the summary. I think we have been seeing this shloka for a long time. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyah sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvanapina lipyate. Right? So it talks about karma yoga, talks about dhyana yoga, talks about jnana yoga. Everything is covered in this. And following this, you will reach moksha, which is basically like freedom, right? And yeah, so I think I will stop here, and let us see if any of you have any questions we can discuss.
So, thanks for the wonderful talk, sir. Now we'll open the session for question and answer session. Please feel free to ask the questions by raising hands.
Hello, I am Anirban Datta. I would like to ask one question. In office, generally, whenever we work with subordinates, other colleagues, sometimes situation happens where we see that faults of that employee, other employee, and I mean, try to sort out. But after some time, but still some things it is means rancor in our mind that no, he has some faults, he has means some defects in that working style is not good, or no, those type of discussions is going behind of him. But many of times I say that why don't we discuss in front of him and sort out that why we are discussing in behind of him. So whoever absent in that discussion, sometimes we are trying to discuss and to show that now we are good, but he or she have that problem. So in work culture, in office, how the things are actually handling, how means what are the way you are handling, or what are your approach? So I would like to listen about some advice.
Yeah, good. So see, one thing first you need to understand is spiritual life is for yourself. Okay. Now, you cannot change the world, you cannot change other people, you have no control over them. Okay. You have control only over yourself. So, what you can change is your behavior, your attitude, you can change. Okay. Now, looking at you, if other people also follow the same good values, then fine. But you cannot change others. That's the bottom line. Okay. So, Atmano Mokshartam Jagat Hitayacha. That's what Swamiji says, right? All the spiritual values, spiritual life, morality, everything is for you. Okay. It's for Atmano Mokshartam. And as far as the Jagat is concerned, you can say, okay, Jagat Hitayacha. You can do some welfare activities in the world. You can pray for other people. You can help other people as much as possible. That's all. Okay. You can only do Hita to the world. You cannot give advice to the world. So, one thing you should understand is everything is for, all these things is for you to follow, not for giving advice to others unsolicitedly. If someone comes and asks for advice, then you can talk to them. But unless someone comes and asks for advice, you cannot go and give advice. It will not work. Okay. It will be a waste of time. And also you will, it's a disgrace to the advice itself. Free advice has no value. Even in Gita, after teaching the entire Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, tell this Gita only to people who come and ask for it. You should not go and tell to people who are not interested. Okay. So you cannot give any advice to people who are not interested. So you can follow some values, and then you can hope that others will pick up good values from you. You can only follow it yourself. Okay. Now, as you said, like there are different people have got different goals in life. Some people have got money as the goal in life. Some people have got promotion as the goal in life. Some people have got pleasures as the goal in life. Depending on each person's level of spiritual evolution, they will have their own goals in life. Now, you cannot dictate others' goals. You don't have control over it, and you don't have there is no right also. Everyone has got their own spiritual evolution, right? And they will have to follow their own way of path, right? Now, you have your own goals in life, and let people have their own goals in life, right? So you don't interfere in others' life. As long as they are following dharma, it is okay. Dharma is something which has to be done, enforced, if your position is to enforce dharma. That is also there. You cannot take the law in your own hands, right? If you are a police, then you can enforce dharma within the scope of your duty to enforce dharma. If you are not a police, if you are an ordinary citizen, then you cannot take dharma in your own hands and you cannot dictate things, right? So even in your office, right, you can enforce only policies if that is your duty to enforce policies. If that is not your duty, you can only follow the good policies in your office. You cannot enforce it. See, in the Ramayana, when Tataka and Maricha, Subahu, all these people were giving trouble to Vishwamitra, being such a powerful sage, he actually could have taken the weapon, and he could have just he could have even just taken one grass and thrown at all these people, and everyone would have died in that instant. He had that much power. But he did not want to take the law in his own hands. He went and complained to Kshatriya, the Chakravarti, whose responsibility was to ensure that dharma is followed. He went to Dasharatha and said, Dasharatha, these people are all disturbing my yajna, so I want you as a Kshatriya to send your son to solve this problem. Vishwamitra did not take the law in his own hands, even though he was such a powerful sage. And in fact, he taught Rama and Lakshmana how to use all the weapons and how to fight and everything. And then he made them fight, right? That's the right thing. So if you find that in your office, some policies are being violated and then some adharma is happening, you should identify who is the right person to complain to, whose responsibility it is to enforce dharma, whose responsibility it is to enforce that the right policies are made and the right policies are being implemented. You go and raise it to them, right? And your duty stops there. You don't have any obligation that that you should enforce things in your that is not your duty, right? Do your duty. That's as simple as that. You understood?
Thank you.
Next question, Manas Saha.
Sir, thank you very much for your beautiful explanation on life building. Actually, sir, we are expecting more week you spend with us also. Now, sir, I have two questions. One question is, what is physical tapas? Without physical tapas, can it possible to achieve mental tapas? This is my first question.
Yeah. So, see, Gita, we saw physical tapas, right? Devadvija Guru Prajna Pujanam Shaucham Arjavam Brahmacharyam Ahimsacha Shariram Tapa Uchyate, right? So, physical tapas, it talks about Brahmacharya, Ahimsa, Arjavam, right? And Pujanam, right? Like, so bowing down to wise people. like physically bowing down, right? When you go and meet when you go to a temple, or when you meet a monk, you go and fall at their feet. That is physical tapas, right? Devadvija Guru Prajna Pujanam, right? Then Shaucham, keeping all your places neat and tidy, right? That is also a physical tapas. And then Arjavam, right? So aligning your action with the aligning your action along with your thoughts, intentions, and words, that is also one tapas, right? Then you have brahmacharya, celibacy, continence, right? And chastity, right? And also it can be expanded to all other kinds of self-control, right? That is brahmacharya. Ahimsa, right? Not creating harm to others as much as possible. That is ahimsa. So these are all Sharira tapas. Now, when I told you that you should not, torture your body, but the tapas is for the mind, what I mean is this. Suppose if you say, I will not eat any food for 2 days, that is torturing the body. Now, suppose if you say, I will not eat anything sweet for the next 2 days, that is disciplining the mind. There's a difference, no? Suppose, so the design of your tapasya or your austerity or your vrata should be such that it does not affect the health, but it should exercise your mind. It should exercise your willpower, right? So you can say, for 2 days or for 1 week or even for 1 month, I will keep away from all social media. That is a tapas. It's a mental tapas. It doesn't affect your health, right? Or you can even say, for next 6 months, I will not I will not take a second serving because I like something. Actually, this is a very, very, very beautiful tapas, I will eat whatever is kept in my plate. I will not reject something because I don't like it. And just because I like something, I will not take a second serving. I will not eat more because I like something, right? So that is a beautiful tapas which you can follow, right? I don't eat for taste. I eat for health, or I eat because it has to be eaten, right? So I won't take a second serving just because it is tasty, and I will not reject something just because it is not tasty. Whatever is given, I will eat, and I will not ask for more. That is a tapas. There are so many different kinds of tapas which you can follow. You can say, for 1 week, I will eat food without salt. If you have control over what you eat, if you cook your own food, you can take a tapas, like, for 1 week I will eat without salt. Or you can say, for 1 week I will eat without oil. Or you can say, for 1 week I will not eat anything sweet. Or you can say, for 1 month I will eat only 4 times a day, or 3 times a day, or 2 times a day. You can decide. And no eating in between. No snacks. No eat. So that is, a lot of people even follow that, actually, like, even for health reasons, right? Whatever you eat only within 1 hour, and only 3 times a day. No eating in between, right? No snacks, right? No junk food. You can with food only, you can actually, so many different kinds of tapasya you can follow without affecting your health. In fact, your health will improve. Understood, Manas?
Thank you, sir. Understood, sir. Second question, basically, this is on meditation. Actually, sir, when I am doing meditation, I always try to do meditation in my hearts, as you told. But sir, sometimes feeling very good and very beautiful feelings was there. But sir, sometimes when I am doing meditation, sometimes I feel that all are going to head. मतलब कभी-कभी ऐसा होता है सर, कभी-कभी लगता है कि मेरा सब कुछ मतलब माथा पे सब कुछ चला गया, मतलब थोड़ा दिमाग भारी हो जाता है. ये क्यों होता है? ये मैंने समझ में नहीं आता. Actually, this is not between two eyebrow, but sometimes feels मेरा मेरा जो सर है ये थोड़ा भारी हो गया है कुछ कारण से, ये इसके पीछे सर क्या रीजन है, ये समझ में नहीं आता।
Can you elaborate slightly more?
Sir, actually, when I am doing meditation, I have started by looking my chest, the center of the chest, and we are. I am doing completely okay. But sir, when I मैंने जब अंदर घुस जाता हूँ सर, तब समटाइम्स मुझे फील होता है जो कुछ हो, मतलब सर सारे कुछ ना, जो फीलिंग जो हो रहा है, जैसे मैं सोचता हूँ मेरा जो इष्ट है वो मेरा मतलब मेरा चेस्ट का सेंटर ऑफ द हार्ट है, सेंटर ऑफ द हार्ट। और समटाइम्स ये क्या होता है ना सर, ये जो फीलिंग्स है ये कभी कभी लगता है कि मेरा हार्ट का अंदर ये मैं फील नहीं कर रहा हूँ, लेकिन ये मेरा फील हो रहा है सर, मेरा मतलब ये मेरा हेड पे फील हो रहा है, मतलब मैं अंदर से ये मैं सोचता हूँ ये क्यों।
Okay, so that happens especially for people who are in general engaged in intellectual activities as a part of the regular work, right? Even when you try to meditate on the heart, suddenly like it will shift to the head. That happens. Okay, so what you do is like you slowly, gradually just bring it down back to your heart. That's all. So you don't need to worry. Anytime, moment you find that okay, like your meditation has shifted into your head, you just gradually bring it down to your heart. That is one thing you can do. Another thing is you take your middle finger and like in the center of the heart, you just slightly scratch. Okay, don't hurt yourself, but just to create a feeling there. Then you can have better concentration on that place where you touched, right? So you can just slightly. Why I'm saying middle finger is so that you cannot apply too much of pressure with this finger. Okay, that is why. So you just do this slightly, and now you have a kind of a feeling. Now you can close your eyes and easily concentrate on the center of the heart. In case you have difficulty holding your concentration in the center of the heart, you can slightly touch there, so and then you can slightly scratch. Then you can improve your concentration with that, right? That is okay.
सर ये प्रॉब्लम होता है, फील करता हूँ मैं सारा दिन ऑफिस करने के बाद, मैं जब शाम पे आके ये मेडिटेशन करने का कोशिश करता हूँ उस समय ये ज्यादा होता है, सुबह जब करता हूँ इतना ज्यादा नहीं होता है।
That is expected because your work is more intellectual, so it happens. So you do these two things. One is whenever your mind has gone to your head, you just slowly bring it down to your heart. And in fact, like some of the scriptures, what they say is you can even use your imagination. Like you imagine a light, the flame of a light in the center of your head, and then you slowly bring it down, right? And you put it at the center of the heart. So whenever you find your concentration is shifted to your head, you slowly bring it down and bring it back to your heart, right? So you can do that, or this is very effective. Like just you slightly scratch your center of the chest, and then you can very easily have the concentration in the center of your heart.
Or sir, actually, or one thing, sir. Actually, can I actually when I do a meditation, sometimes I कभी-कभी ऐसा भी मैं करता हूँ, जो मेरा अंदर ठाकुर बैठे हैं, उन्होंने मेरे साथ कुछ बात कर रहा है, उनके साथ उनका कभी-कभार थोड़ा इमेजिनेशन में बहुत कुछ कर लेता हूँ, उसके पैर में हाथ रख के मैं प्रणाम कर रहा हूँ, या वो मुझे उसके कांधों में इस टाइप का मैंने सोचता हूँ। तो ये क्या गलत सोचना है, या मैं फिक्स्ड भगवान का जो मूर्ति फिक्स रख के उसी का ऊपर मैं कंसंट्रेट करूँ?
This is fine. This is fine because see, during the initial stage of meditation, having concentration on a fixed form of the Lord, you might not be able to get concentration for a long period of time. So it is okay to basically, like as I told you, meditation is sajatiya pratyaya pravaha, like flow of similar thoughts. So it is okay. In fact, you can even go to that extent that, you know, like you can think about, okay, the Lord is there, and then he's there in Vaikuntha, and then Swamiji went there, he hugged the Lord, and he brought him down to the world, and he took birth in Kshudiram's house in Kamarpukur, and then like he grew up, and then like, you know, in fact, like there is a shloka, you know, like the stotra is there, like you have the what is that, the Suprabhata shloka, right? Which follows through the life of Sri Ram Krishna, and even the Mangala Sasanam also follows through the life of Sri Ram Krishna, right? Like he was there, he was in Shivaratri, he you know, went into samadhi, looking at birds, he went into samadhi. Then he did you know, sadhana of various religions, and then like in Dakshineshwar, like he was devoted to Kalima, and then like different disciples came, he talked to them, like, so basically like the whole, you know, like the dharmasya glani bamitah paradrishya shigram kamara pushkara iti pratite samruddhe grame suviprasadane hebijata deva Sri Ramakrishna, right? And like whole thing is there, no, like Rakala Tarak Harimscha Narendranatham Anyan Vishuddhas, like, so all the devotees' names, they came, the disciples came, the whole thing, the whole life story of Sri Ramakrishna is available as shlokas. You can even you know, like memorize those shlokas and learn the word by word meaning, and then you can meditate upon the life of Thakur using those shlokas, right? Even that is fine, right? Visualizing all the various scenes in his life and all that. So this is called Leela Dhyana. So this is fine, right? So Leela Dhyana, Manasa Puja, right? You worship the Lord with, you know, Dhupa, Deepa, Gandha, Pushpa, Naivedya. You can all those things you can do, right? So these are all fine, okay. But after doing all these things, finally you meditate upon a fixed form of the Lord. After doing all these things, finally you meditate upon the fixed form of the Lord, preferably the form where he is seated, right? He is seated, and in that form of the Lord, you look at him, and then there are dhyana shlokas also, right? Hridaya Kamala Madhye Rajitam Nirvikalpam, right? There are dhyana shlokas. You can memorize the dhyana shlokas, and then you can word by word meaning you can meditate upon, right? And so there are so much of slokas, stotras available, and forms, stories, you know, like everything is available for meditation upon the Lord. Finally, you meditate upon the Lord in a seated posture, and as it is the Lord himself who has come in this form to accept your worship and as a model for your spiritual life. So ultimately, what is needed is your surrender to him, right? All these things are there. Finally, like you should, as I told you, know, what is important is there are only two entities in this entire universe, you and the Lord. There is no third entity. That you have to hold on to. So all this meditation, everything is only an aid finally to that. Okay. To the truth is there is no duality in this world. The Lord alone exists. Nothing else is there. That is very difficult to reach. So you come down one level where you say there is only two entities in this world, the Lord and myself. There is no third entity. Don't come down below that. Below that, you can come down, like, which is, you know, where okay, there are multiple people in this world, this universe is there, and like I work in this world, my parents are there, my family is there, my colleagues are there. So that is one more still level lower, and as much as possible, like don't stay in that level. Always stay in the level where you say the Lord alone exists in the form of my father, in the form of my mother, in the form of my friends, in the form of my family members. It is the Lord alone who is in the form of all these various things, and whatever I do it to the Lord in these forms, and whatever comes in my life, it is the Lord who comes in that particular result he gives. By his will, everything happens. So there are only two things in this universe, me and the Lord. There is no third entity at all, right? Now, to enhance this bhava in your life, to enhance this bhava when you are interacting with this world, your meditation is the key. So what is important is how you behave outside your puja room. What you do in your meditation is only the setting the mood for your interaction with the world outside. Okay, meditation is not the final one. What is the final one is what happens when you are not meditating. Your meditation is a training or to align your mindset, how you should behave, how you should think when you are not meditating. That is what is. So it is more important how you behave when you are not meditating than when you are meditating. What your meditation is basically a is a tone setter, right? A theme setter for the rest of your time. Okay. So ultimately, like, your entire day should be connected to the Lord. And meditation is basically just to give the kick, like the prime mover, like to give the kick there. That is why Thakur says, like, mane, bane, kone, right? So throughout the day, you have to meditate in your mind, mane. Now, to give the booster shot to that, to create that force, to start that off, or to give energy to that mental meditation throughout the day, you do kone. Kone means in the corner, in a puja room. So in your meditation room, whatever you do, the daily sadhana gives the energy to do mental sadhana throughout the day. Then comes the bane, right? So basically, like, once in a month, spend a weekend away from your house exclusively for sadhana, which will basically give the energy for, it's a booster dose for your everyday meditation. So Sri Ramakrishna talks about 3 levels of sadhana. Mental sadhana 24/7. To support that mental sadhana 24/7, you do in your puja room maybe 1 hour or half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever you do every day, which gives the energy for the mental sadhana, which is the kone in the corner. To give energy to that, you go for a spiritual retreat once in a month or once in 2 months, 1 or 2 days, 3 days, you go for a spiritual retreat where you spend the entire day in japa, dhyana, swadhyaya and all that, which will give the still booster dose. So these are 3 levels at which you do the sadhana with 3 different levels of intensity, and one will support the other. This is the procedure which Sri Ramakrishna has recommended. Mane, kone, vane. Right? So don't think what you do in the meditation room is everything. Like, no, that is only the support for you to be able to remember the Lord throughout your waking time, or even while sleeping. Like, so spiritual life is 24/7, and what you do in a meditation in your everyday sadhana is only a support for that. The real spiritual life is 24/7.
Thank you, sir, very much, sir. God bless you all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone who would like to ask questions? Saurabh, you can ask.
Yes, sir. We can unmute. You are mute. You are muted now.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Thanks a lot, sir, for your teaching. And one just point, you have said heart. You have mentioned heart, meditation at heart. So is it the actual position of the heart, or it is the center of the chest?
Center of the chest. We call it as the heart, but it is just the center of the chest.
Okay, center of the chest, not actual position of heart.
Not the physical heart. No.
Okay, sir.
Good. So if there are no more questions, I think we can wind up. So thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity, and it was really enjoyable and very, very useful to me these 5 weeks to prepare for these talks. I enjoyed preparing for these talks, and also it was tremendously useful to me. It was really, I cannot express in words like how much it has helped me to prepare and to hear your questions and thinking on those lines. So thank you for arranging this, and thank you for all the questions that you have asked. And of course, I've been able to prepare and talk and answer to your questions only because of the weekly Vivekananda Study Circle at IISc. So they're great, serious spiritual seekers. The students who attend that, they uh, ask questions left, right, and center, and discuss spiritual life threadbare to its fundamentals. And it is only because of the down to earth first principles questions which the students have asked in the weekly classes that I induced me to think all these from the fundamentals, and being able to put this together, put these 5 talks together, and also answer all these questions, because the questions which you have been asking, these almost all the questions, I would say, have already been asked several times by the students of the study circle, over which we have discussed in detail, given a lot of thought to it, and that is the reason why most of the questions I've been able to answer to you straight away, because these are not new questions. Like, they have been already discussed in the study circle, in the weekly study circle at which we have now online, right? The Vivekananda Study Circle. So my biggest thanks is to the Vivekananda Study Circle, and of course Ramakrishna Mutt, Alsur. We have the Vivekananda Yuvak Sangha, where I learnt all these things. So everything that I have learnt is from the monks who have given the classes at Vivekananda Studies Yuvak Sangha at Ramakrishna Mutt, Alsur. And everything that I know, I wove to that one center of the Ramakrishna Mission, which I've been associated with for more than 25 years now. And the interactions, the opportunity for personal interactions with lot of senior monks and listening to them and discussing with them. So that has been the blessing of my life. And like, I belong to Sri Ramakrishna. This dog belongs to that master. That's all that I can say. And all the credits go to him. And I hope by talking to you, I have brought people to him, and him to you, and I am just his instrument. Thanks for listening. Thanks for asking questions, and thanks for giving this opportunity. And I have got nothing of my own. Everything belongs to Thakur. Jai Ram Krishna.
Thank you very much, sir. We are extremely grateful to you for taking out your time from your busy schedule and conducting this course for us. Thank you very much for this, and we would like to conduct more such workshops in the future also. Thank you, sir. Now we will end the session with Jaikara. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Shri Mahamaya Ki Jai. Jai Shri Swamiji Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. जय श्री दुर्गा माई की जय. Thank you everyone for joining us. Jai Ram Krishna.
Jai Ram Krishna. Jai Ram Krishna.